And so, before we started, we went to the first of the Gulags that we'd really been to, which was the labour camp where Stalin sent all the completely innocent political prisoners. 20 million people died as a result of Stalin trying to get the intellectuals away from him. And people were sent from Moscow to here, in this kind of temperature. It's that astonishing contrast between some of the really beautiful scenery with terrific hills, not much trees because we're pretty far north, and the reality that people were here, literally where I'm standing, knowing that they might only have a day to live. My perception of the Gulags was that they would be in the middle of nowhere, like we are now, but I hadn't actually got a perception of what the middle of nowhere is really like until you stand here. And suddenly the words take on a real meaning because you're absolutely so far away from the places we've been to. We're an hour and a half drive from the very small town we've just come in from. And these guys walked here and stayed here. And I find it horrifying. You can see the wire, it's just so put down. You can feel the people putting that together, yeah. Can't you? And there's
just twisting that wire around like that.
There's something in there which is full of loathe for the place. And then we hit quite a shock, because everyone thought that they'd seen difficult roads, but actually we really were on ice roads. And for the very first time, certainly the four mechanics realised there was no way, under any circumstances, an ordinary saloon car could get anywhere on these roads. And this was just the very, very first 100 miles of 3,000 kilometres ahead of us. And I had to have a big discussion to say, look, we must get the strongest people there. And actually, interestingly, I wasn't one of those.
Not to that stage yet. But I know that Paul's concerned, and the Russians are very concerned, that we could actually blow clutches terribly easily. And my feeling is that what I'd like to do now is to make sure that in each car, and we've only got 4, there's at least one, what Paul would call, because he's the guy in charge of the car, strong driver, right? And I'm not going to say at this stage Jenny or Marielle or people who aren't considered to be the strong drivers are the wrong people to drive, but I do think that we shouldn't have Dieter sitting in the back on sections where it's difficult. So what I'd like to do is change it round, if I may, and say to Jeff and all of you, you work it out. If it doesn't seem to work out properly, I'll jump in. But we do need to work out a way in which what are known to be the strong drivers are in a car so they can drive. Okay. Well, I've half driven the car into a deep snow. This is a very good way of saying to them that if I, the expedition leader, won't try and get it out, I don't want them to get it out, because if we do, all we'll do is hurt the clutch. And this is not in any way serious. It will happen all the time as you take a slight dip. But the biggest problem is not going into a ditch, but is how you take it out. Make sure you always get it dragged out, rather than use the engine to get it out, because that's the best way of wearing the clutch that I can think of.
And the cars were finding it every bit as difficult as we, the drivers, were. The miles per gallon had gone down from the normal 15, 20 that a Maverick would do, down to 3 or 4. And as we had to take all our fuel with us for this long stretch ahead, Rupert, who was in charge of logistics, was pretty concerned about the fact that we were running through petrol far faster than they thought we should be.
Do you think, I mean, is it realistic to turn the Eberspacher car heaters off at night to save some fuel consumption? What do you think?
Not really, because they've been open the last couple of nights.
Obviously, it's of some concern that we get it right. Thanks. Yeah, we've got some worries about fuel consumption at the moment, because, as Paul just said, a litre a kilometre, and that's the cars. We're meeting some very tough road conditions already, and the cars are having to work really very hard. We've only got 5,000 litre petrol tank, and I'm worried, seriously.
I actually found the drive extraordinary. It was the beginning of an expedition, whereas before we'd just been moving through a deep freeze of Siberia. And suddenly, out of nowhere, arrives a helicopter. And that was because the local mayor had been aware of my interest in the Gulags, and he came down to take us to one which you could only get to by helicopter. And I'll never forget it.
Well, thank you very much for dropping in on us.
Спасибо, что вы на нас обрушились.
So very
Funny, as you look down, the place looks so astonishingly beautiful and so different. But just take your mind back 50, 60 years, when I was born, for crying out loud. And this is where people were shipped from Moscow. 1 week they were in Moscow in their completely centrally heated place, and the next day we're here where they knew they were going to die of cold. And when I say they, most of the people in this camp were women. Housewives, whose husband had been caught with an English newspaper, or listening to BBC World Service.
And to the women who were sent here without hope, deprived of any human feelings, deprived of the warmth, deprived of their families and children, it was a survival. And I only hope that we can be a fraction of them being strong.
And to think that people survived out here and actually lived in the middle of nowhere, and we're faced, I mean, we'll go back and we'll have nice hot food and everything. I mean, these people live for years in this, which is nothing.
I physically cannot believe how they survived. I honestly don't know how they survived, because obviously they wore nothing either. But the thing that actually affects me more than anything else is the total silence. I cannot get over it.
So we left the Gulags and we set off on our expedition with our big, thick, heavy clothes. But actually, it was easy to think that we were okay, but we had an extraordinary drive ahead. And I knew that I was now doing what Stefan and so many people said I must not, which was going ahead with all the women on board, up the most difficult road that no one else had ever managed to do. The last people who attempted to do this journey was a joint Army, Navy, Air Force team from Russia, and they failed. So that's what we were setting off for. And as I arrived back to the trucks, looking down at them from the helicopter, I was aware that I had taken a huge risk just to see if we could do something which no one else had done before, and I was learning why they hadn't, because it was pretty tough.